いとか言葉なくし嘆く術もないあるはずのぬくもりが突然に気が下がって凍る胸聞こえることを立ち上がれと立ち向かえとあなたは言うのか砕けた夢が刺さる痛みにあえぎながら光の刃を鬼にして戦い続けるだけ裂かれた傷が流す真っ赤なマグマのような光を刃に今かがって戦い続けるだけきらめく刃に刻む奇跡
Hello and welcome to The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 2. I'm super excited. If you haven't seen my playthrough of Trails of Cold Steel 1, I highly recommend you watch it. It's 130 episodes, but before we start the game, I'm gonna go over the backstory for anyone that doesn't watch Trails of Cold Steel 1. So we're just gonna read through this real quick. We're just gonna read the Trails of Cold Steel summary, and I'll bring up anything else that's relevant if it's not mentioned here. Oh wow. We're gonna just read the final chapter so you can see, kind of remember, like, so we can remember where we left off. Final chapter, put to the test.
Safely back from their brief trip to Ymir, Reen and his classmates began practicing for their upcoming concert. Under the watchful eyes of Elliot and Crow, they put all they had into their practice sessions. And thanks in part to the fact that they weren't all complete amateurs, they were finally ready to perform.
The time came for the preparatory day before the festival. Green chose a classmate to accompany him to collect the finished outfits from a boutique in Heimdall. For us, it was Pete. But walking out with the outfits in tow, he ran into someone he wasn't expecting to see. It was the famous opera singer Vida Clotilde, also known as the Azure Diva. Although Green was more familiar with her as Misty, the host of a radio program broadcast in Tristana. Having met her once already, Reen took the chance to invite her to attend the festival and watch the concert. The time finally came for the 2-day-long festival to begin. Reen spent the first day helping the student council, visiting attractions with classmates in his spare time. As the day came to an end, Class 7 gathered for a final meeting to discuss the concert being held the next day. During their discussions, however, they heard the sound of a bell chiming from far away. The source of the chiming turned out to be the old schoolhouse that they had become so well acquainted with. Given permission by Sarah and Principal Van Dyke, they descended to the lowest floor, and each and every one of them were stunned by its new appearance. Guided by Emma and Celine, who seemed to know something, they resolved to restore the building back to normal. Eventually, they found themselves in what could only be described as an otherworldly battlefield, face to face with a monstrous black shadow. After a challenging battle, they were able to defeat it, overcoming the trial that it represented. They were transported and knocked out in the aftermath, but once they opened their eyes, they discovered the building was back to normal. Suddenly, a door that was before them opened. On the other side stood a giant humanoid. I think this humanoid creature right here is going to be the main focus of Trails of Cold Steel 2. I'm assuming, and it'll probably explain why. the 7 arc tall ash-colored knight. I think 7 arc is like, I want to say like 20 to 30 feet. I think it's like 1 arc is like 10 feet, so I want to say it's like not 10 feet, like probably 5-6 feet. So it's pretty tall. The next day, the second day of the festival began. Rean managed to put the night out of his mind enough to focus on showing Elise, who had come to visit around the academy campus. That's his sister. During the afternoon, the time finally came for their concert, and this is a little like image of their concert. Each of them gave their all to their performance, and they were able to finish both songs. When the audience feverishly called for an encore, Class 7 was more than prepared to perform a third. During the third song, the audience was invited to sing along, and the concert proved to be an immense success. Okay, this doesn't really matter. Okay, this matters. After the concert, the after party began. Rean thanked Crow for all that he had done for him. Encouraged by Elise, Rean also decided to spend some one-on-one time with someone close to him, Fee, for us. Unfortunately, the party was brought to an abrupt end by a shocking proclamation from Principal Van Dyke. He appeared to tell them that Corellia Fortress to the east had vanished without a trace. So this is this fortress is the fortress that is between Erebonia, which is the empire this takes place in, and Crossbell, which is an independent state, which was previously vassalized by both Erebonia and by the Calvard Republic, I believe they're called, which on the other side of the Crossbell, they're both like rivaling empires, and they both were like trying to they kind of protected the Crossbell as like an like a buffer state almost between the two superpowers. A week passed since then, and the air in Erebonia was more tense than ever before. It was concluded that the fortress's disappearance was due to an attack by Crossbell State, and it was shortly announced that Chancellor Osborne would be making a speech to the nation at noon. Rean and his classmates chose to listen to the speech through a radio in their classroom. Only Crow was missing, having supposedly gone to Heimdall to hear the speech in person. The time for the speech finally came. Osborne's words were forceful and provocative, making it clear that it would end in a declaration of war, not just against Crossbell, but against the Calvard Republic as well, who was believed to be backing the state. However, just as he was about to make that decisive declaration, the sound of a gunshot sounded throughout the skies of the capital. The left side of Osborne's chest was pierced, and he collapsed to the ground in a pool of his own blood. Spectators let out terrified screams as they watched in horror. The sniper who shot him was none other than C, the Imperial Liberation Front leader, who was believed to have met his end in Ruhr. And his true identity was revealed to be a former member of Class 7, Crow Armbrust. Meanwhile, the students at Thors were able to witness the whole string of events through the radio broadcast. At first, they were merely listening to what was happening, but then Misty spoke directly to them. After she spoke, the classroom was filled with the echo of an eerie chant, and a window into what was happening appeared before them. Emma shared details about Vita, the Witch of the Abyss, whom she described as something a sister to her. However, they were all too shocked by what was happening to pay any real attention to her words. As they watched the glimmering visions of the capital before them, a giant silver airship appeared from above the clouds. From it began to fall countless humanoids, all which immediately set about taking over the city. They were 7 arc-tall knights known as Panzer Soldats, made with modern orbital technology. The Noble Alliance had built them sometime in advance, all in preparation for this day. The Soldats used their incredible mobility to overwhelm the main battle tanks guarding Heimdall. And in no time at all, they reached Fall Flame Palace, making the occupation of the city complete. In command of the operation were members of Zephyr, the Jaeger Corps that Fee once belonged to. Nearby, Vita Clotilde stood on top of Heimdall's opera house, blissfully watching the silver arc descend upon the palace. She was met by Blanc, who praised her work, addressing her as Ouroboros' second Angus. With an elegant smile, she accepted his words and confidently issued a proclamation. The bells are tolling for Crossbell, and preparations here are complete. Still, even this grand undertaking is but a jewel in a greater crown, the second stage of the Orpheus final plan. The symphony awaits us. Let the second movement commence. Meanwhile, Reen and his classmates weren't allowed much time to process what they had just seen. Not long after their window on Heimdall closed, they realized that the Soldats were fast approaching Trista 2, which is where they were. Trista is where the academy was. Sarah, Neihart, the principal, and several other instructors defended the west exit valiantly. Eventually, they also received the aid of Sharon, who revealed herself to be an enforcer of Ouroboros. But while they still had their hands full, another group of Soldats began approaching from east of the town. As such, Class 7 resolved to protect the east exit themselves. The battle for Trista began. First, Class 7 fought against a Draken Soldat, and by aiming for its joints, they emerged victorious. But in a sad twist of fate, they were powerless to defeat the much stronger Spiegel unit the terrorist Scarlet was piloting. Reen resolved to use the power deep within him as a last resort. Dost thou desire thy power? But before he could, he heard a voice resound in his mind. He was standing in a strange empty space. Before him stood Selene, who urged him to call the voice's name. Loudly and clearly, he did just that. Heed my call, Valimar, the Ashen Knight. With a bang, the humanoid that they found in the old schoolhouse came flying through the air towards them. It landed, and Reen entered its core along with Selene. Although he had never seen the inside of such a thing before, he instinctively knew how to pilot it, and with that knowledge, he was able to easily best Scarlet's Spiegel. The air was filled with the cheers of his classmates, but they were soon silenced by a familiar voice. Whoa, hold up just a sec. Aren't you forgetting something? It came from above. The source of the voice was a large blue humanoid, one similar to the Divine Knight Reen was piloting. It was the Azure Knight, Ordine, piloted by none other than Crow. Reen despaired at the thought of having to fight him after all the time they had spent together. He tried whatever he could to reason with him, desperately attempting to avoid any further conflict. Yet Crow refused to listen, and with a wry smile, he declared that the Crow Reen thought he knew was never real. Nonetheless, Reen made one last attempt at trying to change his mind. So that's the plan if you win, huh? What about if I win? Reen trusted that Crow would come back to him and the rest of class if he proved victorious, and the battle between the two Divine Knights began. The power of Crow's Azure Knight was immense. But Reen fought back as hard as he could, and he found himself about able to fight on equal terms. Finally, Reen saw the decisive opening he'd been searching for. Enlightened domination. The Azure Knight fell to its knees from the impact of Valimar and Reen's attack. His classmates cried out with relief, but that relief was not to last. The next moment, the Azure Knight transformed, surging with mana, and drew closer to the Ashen Knight. Reen was stunned. All it took was a single hit from Ordine to send him flying backwards, defeated. His consciousness began to fade, and all he could do was wince in fear as the Azure Knight approached. No, you don't. Without hesitation, his classmates stood between him and Ordine in a protective stance. They didn't have a chance of defeating it, but they were determined not to let it draw any closer to Reen. Together they resolved to buy him the time to escape, believing that he could one day bring that war to an end. Reen tried to protest, but Selene ordered Valimar to retreat from the area. Reen cried out in objection, his consciousness growing ever fainter. From outside, one of his close friends bade him a private farewell, which was fee for us. It was clear from their voice how much they cared for him, how prepared they were to face anything, even death. Fighting back tears, Reen cried out to them as the Ashen Knight took to the sky. All he could do was watch from above as the hopeless battle began. No, they need me. Let me stay! His cries resounded endlessly throughout the crimson sky. Trails of Cold Steel ends. So that was the ending of the original Trails of Cold Steel. I'm going to end this episode here, and this will be part 0 of this game. And that's going to be for anyone that didn't get caught up or didn't watch Trails of Cold Steel 1 or whatever reason want to watch the backstory and stuff like that. Alright, but thanks for watching, and next episode we will start the game. Have a good one.